Good morning, everyone, and welcome so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We're going to give everybody an extra minute or two to trickle in, and then we'll get started. Seeing some people trickle in. All right, everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for Lead, Sell, and Delight, how AI sharpens the three pillars of home improvement growth. My name is Becca Mayo, and I am the Director of Partnerships here at gFour Marketing, and I will be your host and moderator today. So whether you're running a single location operation or managing a multi-market brand, today's challenges remain the same. Lead costs are rising, conversion rates are slipping, and customer loyalty is harder than ever to earn. Yet the dealers who are really winning today are doing three things exceptionally well. They're generating the right digital leads. They're executing a more consistent, high confidence sales process. And they're creating customer experiences that turn one-time jobs into repeat business, referrals, and five-star reviews. These are the three pillars of growth: lead, sell, and delight. And today's conversation is going to be about how you guys can sharpen each of these pillars in today's AI-enabled world. So just so everybody knows, now when we talk about AI today, it isn't going to be a hype session, and it's really not about complex tech that's quite candidly very hard to adopt. This conversation is going to be how real home improvement companies are using proven, time-tested strategies and how AI can act as a highly effective support tool for, just example, things like responding to leads faster, to improve presentation consistency, to follow up more quickly and efficiently, and to deliver a better overall customer experience without adding more staff or complexity to your operations. So today's webinar, like I mentioned, is going to be designed as what we like to refer to as straight talk. It's going to be more of a moderated style Q&A format with an expert panelist group today. And we're not going to overload you with theory. We just really want to keep it real, keep it designed to help you elevate your business in 2026 and beyond, and really keep it focused on what's working now in the home improvement space. So without further ado, like I said, we've brought together three industry expert leaders, each focused on one of the growth pillars that matter most. For pillar one, we're going to focus on lead, and we'll hear directly from Chris Behan of TrueVolve. As for pillar two, we're going to focus on sell, and our presenter will be Tim Mush from Paradigm Window. And last but not least, for pillar three, we're going to delight. And Pete Dabble, our very own gFour panelist, will join us and wrap up our discussion. So our goal for you today is very simple. We don't want to overwhelm you, as I mentioned. We want to give you clear, workable takeaways. So if you leave this session with one way to generate or respond to leads faster and more efficiently, one idea to improve your close rate, and one tool or tactic to boost your repeat and referral business, then this webinar will be a success. All right, so before we get into our content today, I am very excited to announce that we are going to be doing live giveaways on our webinar today for attendees who stay with us until the very end. So just to give you a preview of what we will be giving away. So we will be giving away some Apple AirPods Max, which is a donated gift from TrueVolve. We will be giving away a Marshall Stanmore speaker, which is provided today by Paradigm Window. And last but not least, we will be providing an 11-inch Apple iPad. So 3 lucky winners today. Be sure to stick around to the end. We're super excited. All right, let's dive in. So, Chris, let's get started where the growth always begins, lead gen. Joining us today on how to attract and convert better digital leads and also how AI is helping speed up response and personalization is our very first panelist, Chris Behan. Chris, welcome.
Hi. Thank you, Rebecca. Welcome.
Good to see
Welcome,
you.
everyone.
Well, let's just dive right in, shall we?
Mhm.
So, with the lead costs rising today, what are some of the more successful marketers doing to keep costs down?
Well, I think when you look at what home improvement companies are doing to help control costs, is they first realize that we're not in COVID times anymore. We're not in a position where everyone is flush with leads. They converted a really, really high level. And, that time kind of made all of us a little bit comfortable with our processes that we've put in place. Pretty much every home improvement company out there measures their set rate, their issue rate, their close one, all of these different metrics, and they're constantly looking to improve upon that. Like what I tell people is that there's nowhere in your business where you would accept a 95 or 96% fail rate. So the smart companies right now are looking at their websites and they're measuring the conversion rates of their website very, very consistently. And the average conversion rate of a website is about 4 or 5% if you look at the entire set of traffic that's coming into the website. And what big companies are doing and smart companies are doing is they're looking at that and saying, how do I become more successful from a conversion standpoint? So a lot of the companies that we work with are engaging us in what's called CRO or conversion rate optimization. We're conducting experiments on websites to make those websites simply convert at higher levels. There's this massive delta between how home improvement companies design their website and how users actually engage and utilize the website. There's this difference between the user interface, which is that design, and then the user experience. And what I always tell people is a lot of the times the goal of your website should to be abbreviating the conversion processes and not elongating that conversion process. So testing is at the core of all of what these companies are doing right now. They're saying, how can I take my conversion rate, which might be 5%, and make it 6%, which on a percentage basis is 20% better of a conversion rate standpoint. They're testing things like different call to actions, different financing offers, different discount offers, percentages off, different layouts of the homepage, different experiences based off of where that traffic actually originated from. And what's really, really cool is that this is working. Like we work with one very large organization that already had a very, very solid conversion rate on their website, started conducting these experiments on their website and actually increased it by about 35%. So imagine getting about 35% more leads off of your existing marketing. So one of the big things that these companies are doing is that they're very, very focused on their processes. As it relates to your website, the processes is what experiments or tests could I or should I be running on the website to simply make your conversion rate increase over time on a very consistent basis. So process conversion is absolutely critical in a time like this where most people are paying more per click, they're paying a little bit more per lead. You have to be focused on the operations and ultimately the conversion rates of your website and your company as well.
Yeah, such great advice, Chris. I recently heard a speaker say that SEO is dead and not to focus on that anymore. What do you think about that?
Uh, I've done SEO for 31 years. I mean, I started off in search engines like Inktomi, AltaVista, Excite, Ask Jeeves, engines that most people have never heard of. I've heard that SEO is dead for about 27 of the 31 years. The problem with that statement is the people that say that have a fundamental misunderstanding of how search actually works. Like back in the day when I first started, actually a couple years after I started, there was a search engine called Overture. Overture was the most popular search engine on the internet. It was purchased by Yahoo. The same algorithm ran MSN, it ran Alta Vista, Ask Jeeves. It ran all of these other algorithms that were out there. And the mistake that Overture made is they began to blur the line between what an organic or a free ranking listing was compared to a paid listing. And as soon as I saw them doing that, I'm like, well, you're inserting things that are irrelevant, that are pay per click, into things that are supposed to be organized by relevance. And once they blurred that line, they essentially went out of business. It ended that search engine. What users have to understand is that the bulk of the people that go to a search engine like Google, and it's still a notably good percentage on Google, but they're not looking for a product or service. They're not just looking for a paid ad or a paid service every single time. Google has to have all of these other websites as part of their index of websites just to keep the search engine relevant. Or you just become basically the yellow pages, which is completely irrelevant. It's whoever pays the most ranks the highest. So the organic rankings are critical for them to maintain their paid media programs. They have to be indexing all of these websites. So SEO is not dead. It will never die. It will usually account for your least expensive lead in most cases, because done properly, you will actually own that campaign, where in paid media, you will never own that campaign. You will always pay per click. And over time, the cost of that click will always go up as competition increases. So it's one of those things that when I hear that, I simply know that it's a marketing tactic. It's a clever headline to get people, butts in seats or get people on the webinars. There's absolutely no truth to it, and that rumor has been around for as long as the internet has been around at this point. So thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Mhm.
shifting gears a little bit to Google Ads. So when it comes to Google Ads, it's no surprise that the costs are continuing to rise. And sometimes we hear from businesses that agencies they're working with don't seem to have an answer to those rising costs besides spending
Mhm.
more money. Is there anything else that people can do to lower those costs?
Well, I think when you look at something like Google Ads or Bing Ads, and the same is true for Facebook, the cost of a click has gone up over time. There's absolutely no question about that. A lot of us liken things back to, again, COVID times, where the unique thing about COVID, and specifically in Google, was you had less advertisers going after more traffic. So the cost was down and the volume was up. We don't live in those times anymore. Right now, the volume is a little bit down. It's not drastically down. It's a little down, but the cost is way up because there are more advertisers. The problem that most companies have with their paid media programs is they don't utilize data the way that they need to be utilizing it. Google Ads is no longer purely a function of bid and budget like it was 3, 4, 5 years ago, where whoever had the largest budget with the largest bid that can carry it over the longest period of time was typically the one that ranked at the top of the search engines. Google is now more algorithmic than that, and they were very data focused on something like that. So agencies tend to manage Google Ads campaigns and Facebook campaigns one of two ways. They do one of two things, I should say. The first thing is nothing. They manage their campaigns like it was 2020, like it was a function of purely bid and budget, and they don't feed any sale data back to Google. The second thing that some agencies do is at the end of the month, and if you're doing Google Ads now, you probably know what I'm talking about. At the end of the month, your agency sends you a spreadsheet that says, here are the 50 leads that I sent you last month. Do you mind going into your CRM, pulling out which one of these leads set, which one issued, which one ran, which one closed, which one rescinded, which one had credit turned down, so that 45 days or so, or 60 days so after that lead was generated, I can upload that data back to Google or back to Meta and let them learn off of that. So the big difference is now is that Google is a learning algorithm and Facebook is a learning algorithm. And what they want to learn off of is your sale data. When they see that this lead turned into a sale, they can essentially build a demographic based off of that original lead and say, start serving the ad more aggressively to people that fit this exact profile, that have these interests, these incomes, they live in these areas, they're homeowners, they own boats, they like the garden, whatever it might be, it'll build that audience for you. The problem with the second way of doing it is that everything happens 45 to 60 days late. Google's learning curve is delayed roughly 60 days on something like that. The right way of doing it, the right way of driving down cost and increasing quantity and quality is to use what's called a customer data platform, or CDP for short. We use a customer data platform called Segment. And frankly, the reason that most agencies don't use it is that, these platforms can be very, very expensive. So the first thing that I would encourage everyone to do is go back to your agency and say, do you use a customer data platform? Which one are you using? What Segment does and what a customer data platform does is that it essentially directly connects your CRM to the Google Ads interface, to the Meta interface, and it can feed data back to those interfaces as frequently as hourly. Now you have to have a very, very large campaign to be feeding data back that consistently, but you do want to be feeding data back as consistently as daily on a pretty consistent basis. And what that does is that it learns much more quickly. You get the quantity and quality and efficiency notably more quickly. So know that Google's algorithms, Meta's algorithm, Meta being Facebook, Instagram, etc., they're very, very data driven. And if you're not working with an agency that is not using a customer data platform, they're living in a strategy that's 4 or 5 years old at this point.
Absolutely. And that's such a great segue, Chris, into more of the AI focus that we've been talking about. So, everybody's talking about AI right now
Mhm.
and how it correlates in search engines. So, a lot of the time we're talking to people and they just don't even know where to begin, right?
Yeah,
So, what in your opinion goes into ranking, your business in the AI overview in Google? And like how could somebody do that
yeah.
effectively?
And what I'll tell you how to do it, and then I'll tell you a cautionary tale in all of this as well. So AI is still driven by content. The words that appear on the page are still the number one driver of your organic rankings, and they're certainly the number one driver of AI rankings as well. What you have to understand is that the content has to be written in a very specific sense, and it's what we call EAT content, EEAT, and that stands for experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And your content that you create has to conform to the EAT methodology. You have to show them what you're doing, not just tell them what they're doing. You include case studies, firsthand experiences, original research whenever you possibly can. You cite your sources whenever you possibly can. External validation is important in all of this as well. So publishing long form content, 750 to 1250 words that use like headlines that directly ask the question that someone might be asking, and addressing that head on and then answering the question immediately following that is a critical part of ranking in the AI side of search. What I would tell you is that you need to be very careful when ranking your website on the AI side of search. It is a moving target at this point. I mean, I watched a speaker talk about Reddit for 2 hours on stage about 6 months ago because Reddit was a trusted source, was being the operative word for Google's Gemini AI overviews. And now it's fallen to 12% on the trustworthiness side of things. So anything that can be manipulated will be manipulated. And when Google changes the algorithm, they're typically removing manipulations. So the content that you create has to follow that EAT methodology, has to be published out to different directories. And I'm not saying to not use Reddit or Core or anything like that. You want to go ahead and publish to all of these different places so that you can rank in these AI overviews. The the other thing that you want to use in all of this is what's called schema markup, and you can mark up a lot of different parts of your data from organizational to trust to authorship data. There's a lot of ways of creating that expertise inside of your content that you create. The cautionary tale that I would tell you, and I'm kind of moving around a little bit at this point, is that you have to understand what type of content that you're going to be driving to your traffic. There's a company out there now that talks about you want to answer these questions online. And I fully understand that and I subscribe to that as well. But what you have to know is that you have to drive very, very relevant content to your website. Okay. You don't want to just rank on things like when should I replace the siding on my house? What's the best time of year to replace the roof on my house? That is incredibly top of funnel content that will convert at a fraction of the rate of any of your other marketing programs. You still have to have a diverse content program that talks about your core products, your core services, where you do it. Optimization is always about who you are, what you do, and where you do it. It's the three pillars of optimization. If you leave any one of them out, you end up competing on a national level. So even when you rank in some of these AI overviews, it tends to drive national traffic. Most of us work in specific locations, and all that happens is it drives up the bounce rate of our analytics packages. It decreases conversion, it lowers our conversion rates, and frankly, it sends all the wrong signals back to Google. The big cautionary tale, and I can kind of probably close with this, is that you never want to rank in the AI overview for the name of your company. And there are companies selling that service right now. It will absolutely destroy your traffic. Because if someone searches whatever ABC Home Improvement of Des Moines, Iowa, whatever it might be, and the AI overview populates for your name, it's going to answer all of the questions good, and it will purposely point out the bad about your organization as well. There is a cons section built into it without ever involving you in the process. So when you optimize for the AI overviews, keep it around search terms that are non-branded. Keep them away from your brand. There is a major gutter company right now that has this massive problem that when you search their name, it says, hey, they're a good company overall. However, did you know you still need to clean your gutters? It's very expensive, et cetera, et cetera. So we've already had to undo that for a few of our newer members where we had to go in and get them out of the AI overviews because they ranked on their name. So that's kind of the big warning that I'll leave everyone with is you never, at least right now, you do not want to rank for the name of your company in the AI overview. So after the call, I would encourage everyone to go check that out because if you are, it's definitely hurting your business at this point.
Absolutely. Chris, that was fantastic information and incredibly valuable as we, move into the new year and people are starting to plan their plans for next year, essentially. So any further thoughts before we turn the page over to the sales side?
I don't think so. I mean, I just know that, the big thing that we're talking to people about right now is the conversion rates of their website. Do your best to move the needle on something like because it is exponential. I mean, 95% of the traffic that comes to your website leaves without ever doing anything. Okay, that's the opportunity for everyone in the call. Let's improve that by 1% or 2% or even 3%, which for a lot of people will mean double the amount of leads at half of the cost. So be very conversion focused into 2026 is what I would say.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. And before we actually turn the page to our second pillar, I think we have a quick commercial. So let's cue
Cool.
that up.
And it's me. Hey everyone, I'm Chris Bean with TrueVolve. Um, just very briefly about us. All the things that we talked about today are things that we do. We do a lot of search engine optimization, a lot of Google business listings, AI optimization done properly is in our wheelhouse. Google, Bing ads, meta advertising, local service ads. The cool thing with us, there's really two cool things, is that we are powered by a conversion engine. Okay, which means we build the fastest, highest converting websites on the internet. The other thing that I find just amazing and I feel truly blessed to be a part of is that we are owned by the home improvement industry. So off to the right there, you see some of the owners of TrueVolve, myself included, Brian Gottlieb, Vincent Anthony Nardo with Reborn Cabinets, Brian Kaskavalcian, as well as Eric Bonner are all owners in this company. So we kind of have a unique perspective. They guide us in everything that we do from our service models to our product offerings to how we engage with our members. So at the end of the call, there'll be a survey. If you'd like more information, just click on our name and we'll be happy to talk to you. So thank you so much, Rebecca. And thank you everyone for your time. Have a good rest of the webinar.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. All right. Before we switch pillars, I would like to remind everybody, please feel free to submit your questions in the chat. Obviously, we are here to answer your questions and we want this to be as interactive as possible. So please feel free to submit those. But in the meantime, happy to introduce Tim Mush. Tim, how are you?
I am good, Becca. How are you doing?
Good, good. Let's dive right in.
You got it.
So, Tim, now that we have the lead, can you generally describe in your words the optimal sales process with today's home improvement buyer?
Oh my gosh. Yes, I'll give it a shot. Um, it's just that, Becca. And by the way, before I answer that question, Chris, great content. What I got out of that is there's a lot going on with digital lead generation. So my advice to anybody is hook yourself up with a company like Chris's and let an expert help you with this stuff because it's really needed right now. So back to your question, Becca. It's just that it is a process. It's just not an in-home presentation and so forth. The way I see the sales process is kind of the way I've looked at it for the last few years. There's actually 5 sales that have to be made to do a holistic sales process. And that might seem a little bit funny, but let me define them. The first sale you have to make is generate a lead. Chris just talked about that. There's plenty of other ways to generate a lead, but that's actually a sale. You got to get somebody to raise their hand and say, hey, interested in what you got. So that's sale number one. Not done. Sale number two, you got to convert that inquiry to a set appointment. And frankly, that's an area where many companies fall short on. They'll train their salespeople to the nth degree, and they should in their presentation in the home, but they don't necessarily put as much effort into that very important, typically phone call, whether it's inbound or outbound, to convert that inquiry to a solid set appointment. So that's sale number two. Sale number three, you got an appointment set now. Now you got to convert that to a complete presentation because not all appointments turn into a complete presentation. So there's some things you can do to increase that. And then you get a chance to tell your story. Sale number four, convert this particular prospect to a customer. And finally, the fifth sale, and I love the content for today's webinar. That's going to take us up to Pete a little bit later on. You're not done. The last sale you got to make is you got to sell your brand new customer into how great you are and turn them into a lifetime customer and a raving fan. So when you think about it, the modern sales process really isn't just about persuading somebody to do something. It's really about removing doubt step by step. So that's how I look at the sales process in today's day and age, Becca.
Absolutely, Tim. Yeah, and I love how you break it down by steps, like almost as like a step selling method. In your perspective, do you see a lot of sales reps relying on that gut instinct instead of more of like a structured process? And if so, I would love to hear a little bit more specifically on each of those steps that you mentioned.
Yeah, I certainly do see that. Oftentimes we as salespeople think, we've done this for years and years and years. My gut just tells me what to do. So step selling, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that term or two-word term, I should call it. It's really been coined by our friends at Dave Yoho Associates many years ago. Concept has remained the same, but frankly, recently the execution has evolved a little bit. So how about a short definition of step selling? Step selling is a structured sequential sales approach where the salesperson guides the homeowner through clearly defined stages, resulting in a confident decision for the homeowner. That's step selling. Many variations of this. Many of you have sales trainers you work with that have a 9-step, a 10-step, an 11-step. These could be guys like Grosser University, again, Dave Yoho Associates, John Anglis, Chuck Toki. There's a bunch of them out there that have great selling systems out there that rely on step selling. But you know what? Regardless of the number of steps, we feel the foundation. By we, I mean what we do here at Paradigm Bendo. It really is based on 5 stages. And you can kind of pack 9 steps, 10 steps, 11 steps into these 5 stages. And here's what they are. First off, assess needs. Secondly, inspect and measure. Thirdly, present solutions based on what you learned in the first 2 steps. And then configure the products with the homeowner, turn it into a shopping experience, and then finally quote in the proper way. And if you do that, you're going to get much better results than if you are just working with that gut feeling. Because without structure, reps skip steps. They also jump to price too early in many cases, and they tend to over present product features out there. So if you haven't bought into the step selling concept, you really should think about it for 2026. Grab onto some training out there that can teach you this stuff. Put your salespeople on this track, and I think you're going to find your business is going to be better off because of it.
Tim, I'm curious, in your experience, is there a certain step that you hear is often more ignored than others and in the sales process by reps typically, or what do you hear?
Yeah, that's a great question, Becca. There certainly are a couple steps that I think people skip or just don't do. I'm amazed at how many salespeople go into a home and immediately get their product samples out and tell the homeowner why this is so great and everything like that, without really learning a little bit about that homeowner, what their wants are, what their needs are. In other words, they skip the needs assessment step. They really do. And here's something I learned recently that I didn't know, but once I heard it, I thought, yeah, that's true. And there was an organization that actually analyzed about 25,000 sales calls. And here's what they learned. They learned that the optimum talk listen ratio between a salesperson and a prospect is 43%, 57%. And I think you can probably guess which one should be 43%. And yes, you're right. The salesperson should talk 43% of the time, and the prospect talk 57% of the time. Now, I wish we had a stat that's absolutely something we could rely on that could tell us what's going on in our industry, because I guarantee you it's not that. Salespeople just yap, 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 yap. And the poor homeowner is just being overwhelmed with stuff. And we wonder why closing rates aren't where we'd like them. So assessing needs is so important. Put some thought into that, get some training on that, and get your staff using that in the early part of the presentation. The second step, it's really not a step, it's actually a subset of what I call the quoting step, whereas where you're delivering price. And that is offering financing. I know you've heard it over and over and over again that you need to offer financing. And I can just tell you without question, the companies that have a very, very specific, systematic way to present the price with both the price and a financing option in every case are going to sell a whole lot more. And their ticket's going to be higher. So my advice to you would be in 2026, if you're really not hooked up with a finance company that can help you and teach you how to use financing and leverage it, make that a point. It might be the best thing you can do for your business in 2026 if you don't. And I know what some of you are saying. You're saying, Tim, we don't use financing. And when companies say that to me, here's what I do. I ask them, well, why is that? And their answer oftentimes is, well, because all our customers pay cash. Well, I wonder why that is. People often don't have the kind of money it takes to get these improvements. And they won't come right out and tell you that. They'll tell you they want to think about it, get other estimates and all that kind of stuff. Not the real reason. It's a money reason. So those are the two things, Becca, that I see over and over again in terms of skipping steps in presentations.
Absolutely, Tim. Yeah, I second that actually on the financing component. Just, the more clear you can be and options you have, I think the better you set yourself up for success. That's actually a great segue into my next question, which is, I recently heard you discussing the importance of clarity in the actual presentation process. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, a long time ago, a famous sales trainer, I remember listening to him, and here's what he said. He said, a confused mind automatically says no. And that has stuck with me for decades. And have I acted appropriately on it for all those decades? Maybe not. But most recently, I've been reminded of this over and over and over again. So clarity is critical in how you go about your presentation. Here's 5 magic words. This came from a friend of mine, Kyle Hunt is his name. He has a podcast in the industry. And here's what he said. He said, what I do in every case when I'm sitting down with a homeowner, he says, first 5 words he starts with is, this is how we work. And then he describes the process they're about to go on. Because when you think about it, most homeowners have never done this before. They don't know what to expect. They're frankly probably somewhat anxious about it. Where if you can reassure them exactly what's coming, you're going to put them in a state of mind that's going to be good. Plus, it'll keep you on track. So remember those 5 magic words. This is how we work, and then tell them your process. The same sales trainer that's told me a confused mind automatically says no, he also told me this. He says, if you want to be effective at anything you're doing presentation wise, first tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And that brings clarity into this presentation. So confusion, I think we would all agree in our lives as well, it actually creates hesitation. And we don't want that. We don't want to get to the end of a presentation and have them hesitate for any reason. So if there's too many choices, too many features, you know, put clarity into your presentation. So have a goal. And again, I'm referring back to 2026 quite often, or I should say forward to 2026. Have a goal in 2026 to get together with your staff and say, let's make sure everything we do is crystal clear for our presentations.
Yeah, Tim, you mentioned homeowner skepticism, and we hear it all the time, but what we've been hearing is that today's buyers are way more prepared and way more skeptical than they were in, say, 2010, right? So, in your opinion, what is like an uncomfortable truth about the current sales approach that we have to change in order to keep our closing rates high?
Yeah, great question again. There's things like one call close, one layer appointments, and all that kind of stuff that people can have difference of opinion on in our industry. And frankly, you know, different philosophies work in this industry. But the one thing I think that I'm seeing really start to unfold is because people have access to so much information, and oftentimes we end up in front of them when they're way farther down the buyer's path to purchase in terms of what they know. We probably gotta make sure that we are offering pure transparency in everything we do. And I'm talking about your website and your marketing, your sales presentation, and all that. One trend that seems to be going on in here, as an example, is more and more people are putting what they call price estimators on their website. And I know in the past, the philosophy in our industry was no, 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 we can't do that. We can't give them an idea what it's going to cost. Otherwise, we won't get an opportunity to tell our story and build value and get the price we want. Well, I think things are changing there. And I think when you think about it, if you're thinking of a home improvement or anything that you're considering buying, what's the one thing or the first thing, excuse me, that maybe you're wondering? And if you're thinking how much it cost, you're absolutely right. So if we want to avoid that issue until the salesperson is in the home with them, twisting their arm, go for it. But I don't think that's where the future lies in the home improvement industry. And again, more and more companies are realizing this. I'm not saying have your website put a specific cost estimator on it. It can be general, but something that when people do a search of someone and say, how much can I expect to spend for this? You got some content on your website that's going to take care of that for you. So transparency, I think, is really, really what we have to change going forward. If your process feels like it's for your company, not the customer, you're going to lose more often than you win. You really are.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. As we're looking ahead to 2026, in your opinion, how do you see tech solutions really fitting in to help impact businesses' closing rates, customer experiences, and anything that you can point out specifically on how AI can positively help impact some of those things?
I can. When you're talking about technology in general, the number one reason you should consider using it in your sales process is customers expect it. Recent survey, 75% of customers expect companies to use new technologies to create better experiences. Another study from the State of the Connected Customer survey discovers 62% of consumers say that experiences with one industry influence their expectation of others. So what we don't want to do is go into that home with a 6-inch wide disorganized pitch book. You know, technology, I think, is something that can be leveraged in a big way. But keep in mind, your technology should support your process. Be careful not to distract from it. And I love the concept of a guided shopping experience. You know, use technology to give them that feeling, maybe like they're shopping on Amazon, because that's what they're used to. So have them build the product with you after you do the needs assessment and talk about your solution and all that kind of stuff. You know, it really helps standardize best practices with your crew, improves consistency around reps, reinforces clarity. We talked about that earlier, and things such as that. So great tech really is going to make your reps better, and good reps. It'll make average reps better, but it'll make good reps elite players. So clarity is really the thing, and technology can help there. So as far as your question on AI, um, Becca, you know, naturally we could do a full webinar just on that. You know, there's call center tools that use AI in incredible ways to improve efficiencies. You know, you can use Chat GPT. You know, I just fiddle with it by using a homeowner's name and address and directing it to some sources out there and created a prompt in Chat GPT. And it came back with a description of this homeowner, which put me in a great position for lead scoring and things such as that. There's products out there, one I'm thinking about called Paper Route, that before you go out, it really analyzes the prospect's financial situation. So you know where you're sitting with financing options and things like that. And of course, many of us are really familiar with what are called the ride-along tools, where you're recording your presentations and letting AI analyze them and show your reps where they can improve, share it with other reps, and things such as that. So that's really where I think AI can help. And there's plenty more, but those are just a few. So Becca, as I close, you know, as mentioned in my opening remarks, you know, we're really not done, you know, when we get a sale. And we get a sale, it's really time to turn that brand new customer. Remember the 5 sales we got to make? Generate a lead, turn it into an appointment, turn it into a full demo, turn it into a sale, and then turn that customer into a lifetime customer with repeat referrals and reviews. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it back to you, Becca, and we can bring Pete on and he can get to that point and show us how we can make these lifetime customers.
Absolutely, Tim. Well, thank you so much for that expert feedback. You know, that is actually a perfect transition into our third pillar, which is delight. But before we turn the page to pillar number 3, we do have a commercial. So, Tim, I'll let you take it from here.
All right. Well, yes. Talking about technology and sales presentation. If you aren't aware that the company I work with is called Paradigm Vendo, and we have an in-home presentation tool. As you can see here, it pretty much helps everything from the appointment all the way through the close of the sale with digital contracts and quoting and things such as that. If you can read those 5 pillars on screen, they're exactly what I talked about. The 5 things that really make up a step selling system: assess needs, inspect and measure, present solutions, configure products, and quote. And what's cool about this solution is the way we connect it to your pricing. Oftentimes we're connected with manufacturers you work with, and we flip a switch and bang, everything is in there. So you don't have to spend months getting your pricing in here. So that's an important thing. But what I really love about Paradigm Vendo, something I mentioned earlier, is it takes this consumer and turns this presentation into that guided shopping experience where you're actually going to see products come to life, working with that homeowner, having them see, in this case, as you can see on screen, their windows come to life with colors and grids. And it really is fun and gives them that feeling like they're shopping in today's world rather than being blabbed to and told what they should have. So Paradigm Vendo, great tool. my advice to you would be just take a look at it. Get a demo from us. Let us see if it fits into your business. And, I'm pretty confident that in most cases it would. So spend some time with us. Let's learn a little bit about each other and see where it goes from there.
Tim, thank you so much for that excellent, excellent
Hey,
advice.
Rebecca, I was wondering if I can add one thing that's pretty relevant.
Absolutely.
We talked briefly about the pricing tool. We just got done developing a pricing tool along with two of our members that we will be testing. So in the very near future, we will have real analytic and CRO data, whether you should be utilizing a pricing tool on your website. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome. Thanks,
Mhm.
Chris.
Great news, Chris.
Yep, thank
Yeah,
you. I appreciate
exciting.
it, Tim.
All right, turning the page, pillar number 3, delighting your customer. Pete, welcome to the webinar.
Hey, feels good. Thanks for having us. And it's also a privilege to be following up Mr. Tim and Chris. What a great panel here. I'm happy to be a part of it.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to dive right into it. Let's talk about why the post-job customer experience matters so much. So,
Yes.
can you share with us why the post-job customer experience has such a massive impact on lead gen, brand reputation, and long-term revenue?
Yep, for sure. I'm going to keep it pretty simple. I mean, great experiences will create loyal advocates and or referral sources. These sources generate positive word of mouth opportunities. They help to generate, 5-star reviews. Not only do they drive new business, but these positive experiences will keep customers coming back and buying again. And then on the flip side, negative experiences cause churn. They cause potential challenges for your, brand. The damage to the perception that a 1-star review could potentially bring is, certainly hard to overcome. Cost revenue, potential customers flee to competitors. So, it's pretty clear between the differences. And so, yeah, we'll talk more a little bit about, helping you to make sure that you're consistently putting together a good, positive customer experience. And we'll focus on all the wins here and try to stay away from any of those potential challenges we just mentioned.
Yes, yes. Speaking of potential challenges that contractors face, what are some of the actual process problems like that you see contractors running into? So I guess like in other words, what is getting in the way of delivering that consistency?
Life, I think most often, the reality is people are very busy and, oftentimes we're kind of drawn to more of the front end on the lead generation. And, when fires pop up, we need to put them out. I think, the intentions are good, but often, the post job communications, just aren't maybe standard and consistently executed. So it could be a combination of just lack of resources internally or focus, bandwidth. I mean, all the above. But at the same time, we have the privilege of talking with dozens of contractors every week. And, when we have these conversations, most, if not all of them, understand that this is a very important part. It's just when push comes to shove, a lot of these kind of post, again, job communications or experiences are just maybe not as highly prioritized as they should be.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So let's talk about what great looks like, right? So if there's a contractor, let's just say, who is out there who is looking to build a world-class post-job customer experience, in your opinion, what are some of those non-negotiables? What does it look like to build something that's going to translate into more referrals, more repeat business, and more reviews?
Really good question. So first off, consistency is key. Making sure that whatever we put together is built to drive consistent experiences regardless of how much that customer is spending with us. And then we want to be sure not only are we consistent, but we build this engine for the long term. It's not just right now, or maybe we keep communications alive for 30 days. This is really an ongoing effort. So we focus on 4 pillars at gFour. We focus on the whole appreciation component, making sure that we are helping our clients consistently deliver that appreciation to every customer they work with. And then we enroll these customers into a long-term approach to referral generation, referral awareness, top of mind referral marketing. A lot of different ways. We have some really interesting stats that show that 58% of all referrals come in after the 12-month mark of the job being installed. So nearly 6 out of 10 referrals will take place after the 1-year mark of your project being complete. And so this tells us, we need to be focused on communicating forever, especially, up and through that first year. But the more opportunity that we, deliver through that forever approach, the client will continue to see the gains from the referrals. So it's consistency, it's long term, and I would say if you can automate it or much of it, that would be, I think, certainly helpful. And so having somebody internally that's the champion, that's working with, doesn't have to be gFour. There are a lot of options out there, so we can certainly, identify, if there's a fit. If not, we can certainly put you in touch with somebody who, might be more what you're looking for. But automation, consistency, and then that long-term mindset.
Yeah, absolutely, Pete. And it's really no surprise that there's so many moving parts within the post-job customer journey, or even from the beginning, when you're thinking about appreciation, referrals, re-engaging. In your opinion, how should contractors think about prioritizing what to improve first, and, like laying that foundation before actually layering on more?
Wow. It really could depend, on that specific contractor and kind of what they're experiencing. So it's hard to maybe generalize that answer, but I'll try my best here. First, what we generally like to figure out is what their experience is up, and how the lead comes in, how it's catered to from the beginning, how it's communicated along the sales process up through the completion, and then what there will determine, some of the post-sale communication opportunities. And so, is there a referral program in place today? What does it look like? What are the offers? Are you incentivizing referrals that result into wins? Are you incentivizing referral appointments that may not sell, but the trust was already issued, and we want to make sure that we are rewarding that behavior. So these are all things we need to kind of figure out. So what are they doing today? And then is the contractor staying in touch with the customer? Do they have multiple services that they can cross-sell and get back in the home with? So again, it really depends on the contractor, but we try to do like an audit through all of those kind of pillars that we went through to best identify where the opportunity is today. And then, you can kind of take it, step by step, or, if they're comfortable, we can kind of bring everything together and implement all 4 pillars. And then I guess last but not least, I didn't really touch on the reviews. And so, nowadays reviews are certainly something that more and more of the contractors are aware of how important they mean to the business. Years ago, I think there was still some education on it, and now when we talk to people that come in, everybody either has a pain or they have a solution. So we're trying to best understand at what point reviews are being captured through the process, what percentage of jobs are getting reviewed, where those reviews are going online, and then again, how all of that's impacting lead generation and overall experience. So it's a full on, let's roll up our sleeves and pull out some information from the database and kind of figure out where each contractor needs to start first. I know that maybe not have been the most clear answer on that question, but trying to give the general suggestion on that might be a little difficult.
Yeah, well, running it back to what you had mentioned on automation, and I know that we only have 5 minutes left, but I did want to ask you about this because, given that so much of that breakdown is manual, right, for these owners and operators that are manually doing this work themselves, in your opinion, where do you think that automation and AI can really help a contractor and the day-to-day operations?
First of all, I think it can really improve the overall communication, and again, which drives that customer experience. Um, Automating a lot of these, touch points is just critical to know that we can be sure that we're consistently, doing all of these important steps. So the automation piece, AI, I think, can bring in some support, not just during work hours, but potentially, making sure that there's always someone or something, an agent even, answering the phones and or chatting with, interested prospects throughout the day or night. I think when you automate and are more intentional with all of these, post-job best practices, again, it's going to impact the overall experience. And then I think overall, I don't want to call it customer satisfaction, I guess, generally speaking, would be the end result from all of those endpoints. I mean, in our space, we have the ability to look at automating communications and then maybe being more specific with certain messaging based from what we've learned from the customer experience, so we can kind of focus more messaging around what's most important to that homeowner. And there are a lot of AI tools that can help extract that information so that we are communicating on a more personal level, again, just overall impacting conversion on referrals and repeat business.
Yes, absolutely. And, it's really no surprise that there are such positive benefits of, any program related to relationship marketing and helping to increase profitability. But if you could give everybody listening to this one piece of advice on something to do within the next 30 days, what would you recommend that they take away today, with or without AI?
Yeah, with or without AI, I would say, let's look at what you're doing today. What does your post-job experience look like? I mean, most people that we talk to have this great front end experience, and then for whatever reason, once that job's installed, whether or not it's intentional, we kind of forget about the customer, and there's a tremendous opportunity in that relationship. So, what can we be doing more of to continue that relationship forever? To make sure that we are, remaining top of mind, building that engagement, and when people do need us back out, we want to be sure that we're, front and center. So we want to be sure that we're reminding them of how to get a hold of us, all the different ways we can help, all the great things that we're doing out there to continue to, stay trustworthy on that end. So I would say in the next 30 days, if this is a focus, there are programs and, certainly many industry experts that are focusing on customer experience that can help. I mean, gFour, we'd love the opportunity to meet with you to kind of understand what you're doing today. So it's more of like a full-on customer experience audit, from completion of the job to how are you saying thank you? Is it through an email? Is it in person? Do you send a gift? Why or why not? What are you doing for referrals? Are they just organically coming in, or do you have like a setup engine, to consistently deliver and report on referrals? How are you staying in touch? Are you sending emails, or do you send mailers out? Do you text? It's good to have a multi-channel approach. So we'd like to understand that. And then last but not least, at what point in the process or what points in the process are you asking for reviews? what's your success rate on the reviews? Are you automating it? Again, a lot of different things, but essentially it's a full-on audit of, all of those post-install activities. And then we can put together some suggestions on, how to tackle this, pretty soonly after that.
Absolutely, Pete. Well, thank you so much for that excellent overview on how to delight your customers. We do have a quick commercial, and then we were going to launch right into a poll. So before we kick off that commercial, I would highly encourage everybody attending or listening into this session today to participate in the poll and allow us to help you. You are never alone in putting together plans and finding the right partner for you. So please feel free to reach out, take participation in the poll, and our teams will follow up with you promptly. But Pete, while we have that poll, why don't we go ahead and roll the commercial?
Yeah. So with gFour Marketing, we've been in business now for 17 years. We only work in the home improvement space, and we specialize in that post-install, relationship marketing campaign. So we help you do it. So we are really trying to automate most of this so that who's ever in that position today can refocus their energy and efforts and look at other revenue generating opportunities. We've got your back once the jobs are completed. And we do everything from helping you to send that gift, consistently, saying thank you, such an important part to start to leverage that law of reciprocity, to building out a long-term approach for referrals, making sure that your customers are always reminded through the nurture programs, and then all of that results in these 5-star reviews. So we'd love to talk with you and learn more about, what opportunity there might be for you in 26 and beyond.
Perfect. Thank you, Pete. And before we officially wrap the webinar, we are very excited to announce our giveaway winners. So we'll kick it off. Chris, I'll let you kick us off.
Cool. Thank you so much. And again, we appreciate everyone's time. So our winner his name is Dave Provenzola with Pro Bros Window and Door. Dave, we will reach out to you today, early tomorrow, get your mailing information and ship you those Apple AirPod Maxes. Congratulations.
Perfect. Congratulations. I'm moving right along to Tim, the Marshall speaker. Who is our lucky winner?
You are not going to believe this, but I also selected Dave, but he's not going to get 2 prizes. So, Chris, you beat me to the punch. Sorry, baby. Oh, that is funny. All right. So, my second choice is Chris Edelin. Chris will be our winner of the Marshall speaker. And that speaker is awesome. The amount of sound you can get. If you go to rock concerts, you see stacks of Marshall amplifiers. And yeah, when you put one of these in your home, you can pretty much duplicate that. So they're pretty awesome. So Chris, we will be getting that on your way.
Excellent.
All right.
Chris is an awesome guy also. So
Good
All
old
right.
Chris.
Pete, take us home.
Yes, ma'am. Mike Mason is the winner of the 11-inch Apple iPad. So Mr. Mike Mason, Mayson, we'll get this out to you as soon as we can. And congrats. I think everybody knows what an Apple iPad is, so no need to get into the whole explanation. It's going to be a great stuffing stalker for you there. Or keep it for yourself, Mike, whatever you want to do.
Excellent. Well, congratulations to our winners and to everybody that is still tuned in with us. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar, Lead, Sell, Delight, How AI Sharpens the 3 Pillars of Home Improvement Growth. Thank you so much to our panelists, and we look forward to speaking to you soon. If you are interested in connecting with us, please feel free to reach out directly.